If the referees in UFC 328 had done their job and called the illegal knee that Joshua Van hit Tatsuro Taira with, not only would Taira be the flyweight champion right now, but also the UFC might be boycotting all future events in New Jersey. Another edition of Fight Night Thoughts by WatchTheOps. UFC 328 was a great card, especially because the main and co-main really complemented each other. In the main event, you had a hard-fought but technical battle of a striker versus a grappler that really came down to who could better execute their technical game plan, even though there was a lot of heart and violence involved. But this was complemented by an all-action co-main event between Joshua Van and Tatsuro Taira. If the referees in UFC 328 had done their job and called the illegal knee that Joshua Van hit Tatsuro Taira with in the head in round 3, not only would Taira be the flyweight champion right now, but also the UFC might be boycotting all future events in New Jersey. If this seems like hyperbole, hear me out. They made clear at the beginning of the UFC 328 broadcast from Newark, New Jersey, people from Newark pronounce it Newark, New Jersey, that the state had not adopted the unified rules of mixed martial arts. That matters because among those new unified rules was the legalization of 12 to 6 elbows, and also a change in the definition of a grounded opponent, making it a bit more friendly towards the offensive fighter rather than the defensive fighter, meaning that the definition of a grounded fighter no longer included someone merely placing their fingers or hand on the ground. They actually had to have one of their lower extremities, their knees, their shin, bearing weight on the ground. So that change in the definition matters because whether you can hit someone in the head depends on whether or not they're grounded. If you watch UFC 328 in the co-main event, Joshua Van actually illegally kneed Taira as Taira's hand was clearly on the ground. The announcers, the commentators called that out as well. And Joshua kneed him hard in the head as he was coming up. It should have been illegal in New Jersey, although not in other states. Despite that, the referees missed this call and the fight went on. Joshua Van ultimately finished Taira in the last round. I think it was a good stoppage, although Taira complained, and defended his flyweight belt. This was important for Joshua because he kind of won the belt off of a fluke. Pantoja, the former long-standing champion, he kicked Van, and when Van blocked the kick, caught it, and threw Pantoja, Pantoja actually posted bat and broke his arm. Now, that is a TKO for Van, but of course it raised a lot of questions because people are saying he didn't actually beat Pantoja. He won via freak accident. So this title defense against Taira was important for multiple reasons, including as vindication for Van. Full disclosure here. I think that Van won the fight. I'm happy with the outcome, and I'm glad that the fight did not get stopped because of the illegal knee. But that knee did happen. Taira was a grounded opponent, and in New Jersey, that was actually illegal. The reason that matters, yes, this is all hypothetical, but if in a world where Taira was unable to continue and the referees actually called that knee, which was illegal, Van would have been disqualified and Taira would be our new flyweight champion of the world. That did not happen, fortunately, because that all-action fight that went almost a full 5 rounds was necessary to really balance out the card and give us as fans satisfaction in the card as a whole. If you had a early foul caused stoppage in the co-main and then you had that very technical main event, I think complaints would have been much higher about the card. So no harm, no foul, pun intended. But in a world where they had called this foul and Taira was not able to continue, and thus Taira became the flyweight champion, can you imagine the uproar? Can you imagine fans upset that they didn't get the fight that we ended up getting? The UFC upset that one of their champions, very popular American fighter, although he has Burmese descent, he lost the belt on this rule technicality that only exists in places like New Jersey that haven't adopted the new rules. Can you imagine the outrage? And that type of outrage, that type of fan reaction is one that affects the UFC's bottom line. Continue our hypothetical, if that had happened, it's not crazy to think that the UFC would actually boycott New Jersey for events going forward until they change the rules. Why do I think the UFC could be so petty as to take their ball and go home until the rules are changed to their liking? That is the history of the UFC. That's how they've built this business. They've been very strategic about forum shopping, selecting jurisdictions that allow them to operate their business the way they want to and in the most profitable way. UFC 1 was in Denver, Colorado, largely because there was no athletic commission there. So they were able to have their no holds barred classic now UFC 1 event. Similarly, during the pandemic, if you remember, a lot of jurisdictions were shut down because of COVID. The UFC specifically chose Florida to hold events because Florida was open. They also tried to get an event in Tachi Palace and the native reservation in California, and would have done that, although the rest of California was closed, if Disney had not stepped in. For once, Disney, the accommodating brand partner that they've had, the partner who didn't want to say anything when Dana White smacked his wife, the partner that doesn't say anything when the UFC and its fighters said controversial and offensive things, they did put their foot down when it came to the UFC trying to rule shop, trying to pick a friendly jurisdiction for fights during the pandemic. The UFC ended up having fights at the Apex and in Florida. So when I tell you that had things gone south in New Jersey at UFC 328 and the state's choice of rules had affected the outcome of the fights and affected the UFC's bottom line, you best believe they would have put pressure on New Jersey to change its rules and told them, hey, we're not hosting any more events there until you fix these rules. The choice of law or the specific rules of the jurisdiction where you're buying or building your business isn't just important for the UFC, it's also important for my small and medium-sized business buyers and operators, people with boring businesses. If the rules change, you can adjust to those rules, or you can pick a different context, a different venue so that the rules favor you. Remember to watch the ops.